Trade between African countries have challenges such as poor infrastructure, tight border procedures, trade regulations, tariffs, high cost of transactions. But with the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement by 54 countries, these barriers will be reduced as member countries agreed to cut some 90% of tariffs on goods they produce. The trade deal will transform the continent and create a market of about 1.27 billion people. With a combined gross domestic product of $2.14 trillion, it will increase employment, facilitate better use of local resources for manufacturing and agriculture, and increase access to cheaper products. It is also expected to grow about 2.5 billion consumers by 2050. Let's take a deep dive into this development. A very important one has been generating comments from all and sundry. I have the Director General of Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industries, Mine and Agriculture, NASIMA, Ambassador Ayola Olokomi. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Tulu. It's good to be back in the studios of TVC.
Yeah, it's really been a while. This act, let's start with the issues that popped up before it. There were a lot of meetings trying to address the gray areas and all of that before finally we put pen to paper. Now, do you think all of those issues have been addressed finally before we signed on to this agreement?
Well, there was a lot of misgivings, understandably, when this process started. It's a new terrain, and everybody, are always afraid in terms of the question of the unknown. But I think it was also a very good thing that there were some misgivings at the beginning. In Nigeria, we had to temporize, and then there was a process of national consultation on what's to be done, finally. It helped us as a country to have a good look at the agreement. Where are the problems? And it's also helped the African continent, those people who are behind it, to also look at areas where there were problems when the process was going on. But the long and short of it was that at the end of the day, the delay helped us to have a rethink and strategize in terms of how to deal with the possible areas and the problems. But finally, we put pen to paper. Mr. President signed the agreement in Niamey before the entire world. And it's a very good development, not only for Nigeria, I think for the African continent, because the dream of a continental market, which started 1963, eventually became a reality.
That dream became a reality.
Yes.
But the concerns of manufacturers comes to my mind here, where they say Nigeria is yet to become a competitive country. Now, with our population, they are insinuating that it's possible that countries might take advantage of Africa's most populous nation.
Well, I don't think we should see it from that perspective. And I'll make reference to what the national president of NASIMA, Ajia Saratu, said when the agreement was signed. She said, congratulated the president for doing that. And Ajia Saratu also said that the fact that we had to do a national consultative process is an indication of the fact that the president wanted to carry everybody along. And it was a welcome development, and that gave it some legitimacy. That was what Ajia Saratu Aliyu also said. And she now said, the hard work has now started. The hard work has now started. That is it. We cannot wait forever before we start dealing with this issue. We cannot wait. And you cannot envision an African continental free trade without a Nigeria. 1963, our Prime Minister, Balewa, spoke about it. Fast forward to around 1975, as far as the Lagos Plan of Action was concerned, we were also there at the forefront. Eventually, we now had the ECOWAS. Fast forward to 1991, the AEC, which was signed in Abuja, the African Economic Treaty. Well, so it was also Nigeria. And then go on further, when the AFCTA process started, Nigeria was at the driving seat in person of Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, who was the chief negotiator. And then at the ministerial level, it was also our former Minister of Trade, Enalame. So that's been the history in terms of our involvement. So it's not possible. But apart from that, I mean, we can't take Nigeria out of the picture. Even if Nigeria wants to take itself out of the picture, the history, the population, and where you are devolves on you. One way or the other, you'll be involved in it. And so I think that was why, that's the perspective we should have of it.
Indeed, DG. Let's take a break, DG, and we'll be back to continue this very important discussion. We'll take a break and be back with the show. Thank you. Have you back, still talking about Africa Free Trade Agreement, and I have the Director General of NASIMA in the studio here, Ambassador Ayola Olukani. Yeah, we've been talking so much about this. A market of 1.27 billion people, GDP of $2.14 trillion. That's a lot of money. What's the role of the private sector in all of this?
I think the first thing we should all know is that this is an agreement for the private sector. It is not an agreement for government. The government, by signing, of course, is giving up part of its sovereignty in terms of, I will give my sovereignty for this advantage. So it's a private sector agreement. And that means that it's a challenge for the Nigerian private sector. But I also I think we should look at it from the perspective of, I come from the Chambers of Commerce. As far as the private sector itself is concerned, these days, government said, look, we don't have business. We don't have business in business. We don't have business in going to business. So it is your private sector that will deal with the issue. So that is the perspective which you have of it. And that's why the private sector should rise up to it. And that's why in NASIMA, we started this dialogue series as far as the private sector is concerned. Asking our members, the chambers members, to have an understanding as far as the AFCT is concerned. A lot of people just hear it in the newspapers and the news, but you need to pierce the corporate veil and look at the various sections as far as the agreement itself is concerned. It covers services. It covers also products. It covers manufacturing. What you will do is to identify the areas of strength. There should be no fears as far as manufacturing itself is concerned. I know that the reality is that in terms of manufacturing, there's some problem. But what we need to do as a country, and that's what we're doing, that since it is saying that the agreement is finished, this is the baby, you people take care of the baby and see what you can do with it. That's why in NASIMA we are doing this dialogue series. And we've started that dialogue series.
Educate people.
And we are educating chambers members to key into it. And I will now make and go into them. That's one of the things. It's a long educational series. And let me make reference to a few things. We have Nigerian conglomerates. I don't want to mention names here before you start to give them a bill to go and pay for advertisement.
My audit and account department, I'm sure they're watching.
Let us just say Nigerian conglomerates that are trading in 18 countries across Africa. The Nigerian banking and financial sector have the footprint. They are there physically in all those places. Recently, I was in East Africa, and I served as the Nigerian ambassador in Australia, though, but I served also in East Africa. You see, Nigerian banks are there trading, making big impact. March recently, this year I was in Ghana. The Ghanaian financial and banking sector was being repackaged, recapitalization. 11 Nigerian banks are the one in the forefront that have taken over. You have product. Now look at the airline industries. Despite the difficulties with the Nigerian airlines, they are the one that are gradually making incursions into various African countries. So this is an indication, and this is AFCTA in practice. But we can tie it up subsequently, of course, to the question of what is happening with the CBN 5-year policy. And I think this is an area we should look at.
Moving on that part of, we need to energize our export sector.
Yes.
Because what we do basically is export oil and gas. That's where we get major revenues from. So how, talking about 5-year of CBN's plan, economic recovery and growth plan, all of this is centered around one goal, improving exports. How do we very well improve exports?
Well, I think the first thing we should recognize is that there's a big opportunity in this particular area. Let's say 10 billion is what is missing, what we can get more from current situation. And that's why I'll also like to refer to quickly the 5 years. I think it's a brilliant thing from the CBN governor, and we should give 2 thumbs up to him for what he has done. Under that thing, the 5-year policy thrust identified the issues of the 500 billion naira facility to support growth of the non-oil sector. that is one area we should look at. Secondly, the policy is talking about financial stability. It's talking about digital payments, robust payments, infrastructure, and then to boost productivity in certain areas. And I think it mentioned, and please I'd like to read it, because it talks about looking at access to finance for farmers in 10 areas. 10 crop: rice, maize, cassava, cocoa, tomato, cotton, oil palm, poultry, fish, livestock, and dairy. So what they want to do with this facility is to give farmers this facility to be able to produce more, but also beyond that, to improve the annual non-oil export from 2 billion naira to 12 billion 2023. Let's take note of that. Those crops, identify, support farmers, give seedling, let them produce more, and then with the objective of moving revenue from those from 2 billion to 12 billion. But the beauty of it is that they also want to connect, look at it from the perspective of the value chains. That from those products, this is what we want to do, agro-allied industries. And it is possible. I was in Ghana for the GAPS. The GAPS is a match, German African Business Summit. It looked at Africa. And when you talk of Africa, I mean, you're talking of Nigeria.
Sounds really
that
interesting.
We should not look at Africa as a development partner alone, which is always going to the UN, the development outfit, to beg for 0.7% ODA, but as a business partner. So implication is that if you see Nigeria as a business partner, that means that a lot of opportunities which you have, it's going to be Nigeria and the respective countries that, look, listen, we are both partners in business. This is what we want to do. And that is one of the things which is key and very important. And then I stumbled upon information and then paper that says chocolate from Ghana. Chocolate from Ghana consumed in Nigeria is $9 billion. I mean, about $9 million.
That's a lot of
$9
money.
million dollars
you see,
of chocolate.
Yeah.
We also produce cocoa from, but the Ghanaians have been able to very strategic option about it. Hey, the Nigerian market is what, so they converted it and so they produced value. They added value to it.
That's my next question.
So that's the beauty of the 5-year policy trust and the 10 products, and we can do that with an eye on the AFCTA.
It's kind of interwoven.
Yes,
I agree with you, but you know there won't be restriction of movements. Goods and people will move from place to place. Quality products and services, that's what people would want.
Yes.
Because so now that's where Nigeria now comes in. Let's look at our standards again.
Yes.
We need to meet up so that our goods can stand on shelves at Walmart.
I'm sorry to jump in, Tilu. I'm sorry to jump in. I mean, the point you're making is quite clear. Standardization, standardization, standard. As I speak to you, we had problems with Mexico, for example, in the area of hibiscus. Hibiscus, by the way, is nothing other than the zobo, which is used in the pharmaceutical industry. For what reason? The question of standard. We've been able to sort those people out now. There's also the question and issues of cashew as well, because as the Chambers of Commerce, we in NASIMA work on behalf of. So I agree with you, but that's why we have a standard organization of Nigeria. So it is, the challenge is that how do we make sure the standard, and it is doable. Look at the cable industry and what we were able to do. It is possible to do that. But apart from that too, we should also remember the good agricultural practices as we get ourselves ready to be part of the FCTA. It means that your agricultural product must meet the various standards. And I don't see us not being able to do this. It is possible. We'll put our minds.
So you see light at the end of the tunnel as we
well,
round up this segment of the show.
I'm an incurable optimist when it comes to these things, honestly speaking. Believe me, 35 years in the Nigerian Foreign Service, up to a place like Australia where we have the toughest biosafety laws, Nigerians were even able to put their market goods in the Australian market and keeping to the biosafety laws.
Ambassador Ayola Olukani, Director General, Nigerian Association of Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA. Thank you very much for shedding more light on this very important topic, African trade development. This act that everybody is so interested, everybody wants to know what's happening, what's in for Nigeria.
It's a big case.
So everybody's going to get their share, right?
Everybody should work hard to get their shares.
Thank you so much, DG.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Thank you.